West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and across the world on wadr.org. Welcome to NewsLink. Here are the top stories. The Nigerian army renders an open apology to the government and people of Kaduna State over the drone strike that killed nearly 100 people.
I've come here to physically see things myself, to see the extent of damage, to personally identify this community on the unfortunate loss of life, and to convey the sincere regrets of the Nigerian army.
G5 Sahel faces dissolution as Chad and Mauritania consider implementing Article 20 established in the joint platform. Guinean government defends mobile internet restrictions and accuses radios of ethical lapses. And UN Women in Liberia calls for heightened police action against sexual and gender-based violence.
We must protect when the going gets tough and the tough gets going. We must protect, meaning that we should stop compromising violence against women and girls. And I also want to include the boys, because nowadays a lot of boys have been sodomized.
Stay with us for details of these stories and more.
Here is Abdullahi Hassan with NewsLink.
Many thanks for joining us and a warm welcome to our listeners in Gambia, Ghana and Liberia. We begin this edition of the news in Nigeria as the army tenders a public apology to the Kaduna State government and people of Tudunbiri when accidental drone strike killed 85 people and injured more than 60 others. The Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Taurid Lagbaja, who visited the scene, described the deadly airstrike as regrettable. The Army's chief's visit comes days after the accidental strike in the Igabi area local government area, the northwestern state, and promised to guard against such an occurrence in the conduct of military operations.
So I want to tell you that sharing your pain, we are with you in this moment of grief, and we are sorry for what has happened. I've come here to physically see things myself, to see the extent of damage, to personally identify this community on the unfortunate loss of life, and to convey the sincere regrets of the Nigerian army. We will continue to do the utmost best to safeguard lives and property. I will put in place mechanisms and measures to ensure that the kind of unfortunate incident that was recorded on Sunday do not happen again. What we will do going forward is to ensure that we liaise more closely with the community leaders at the grassroots. But I still want to appeal to the community leader that do not take occurrence of Sunday to forge a wedge in your cooperation with the troops of the Nigerian army.
The Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Taurid Lagbaja of Nigeria. Now, the accidental airstrike by the army at the Tudunbiri village in Igabi local government area of Kaduna State is one of the country's deadliest military bombing accidents. Mali and Niger have annulled two long-standing treaties with France that governed cooperation and administrative assistance in tax matters. This information was communicated by both countries' respective governments in a statement on Tuesday. Originating from 1972, these agreements were initially established to address issues related to double taxation, promoting collaboration and mutual support in tax-related affairs. Imo Edet has more.
The decision, outlining a joint statement from the governments of Mali and Niger, hinged on France's persistent hostile attitude towards both nations and the unbalanced character of the agreements. According to the statement, these treaties have led to substantial financial deficits for both countries. This move, international relations experts say, signals a potential reconfiguration of the international tax landscape and geopolitical alignments in the region, particularly between these nations and France. The revocation of these treaties also depicts a wider discontent with France's influence in the sub-region affairs. Niger's junta has also scrapped two key military agreements with the European Union aimed at combating violence in Africa's Sahel region. Recall Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger withdrew from the G5 anti-jihadist force a week ago. The decision to end these defense and security agreements with the European Union coincides with a Russian delegation's visit to Niger, led by Russia's Deputy Minister of Defense to discuss potential military cooperation. Regional security experts project the likelihood of success for a new security pact between these three countries is slim due to the constant pressure from terrorist groups.
A more added report in there. The Mauritanian and Chadian governments are contemplating the dissolution of the joint security platform known as the G5 Sahel. President Mohamed Ould Sheikh El Ghazouani of Mauritania and Chadian Mohamed Idriss Déby Itno expressed that the measure is under the provisions of the convention concerning the creation of the G5. The statement announcing the decision cited Article 20 of the G5 Sahel organization. This article states that the G5 Sahel may be dissolved at the request of at least 3 member states. The 2 remaining members of the group may be forced to consider dissolution after Niger and Burkina Faso on December 1 withdrew their membership. Mali had announced its withdrawal from the G5 Sahel in May 2022. Mauritania and Chad are therefore the last members of this organization, which was created by the 5 countries of the African Sahel in December 2014, in particular, to jointly fight against terrorism and organized crime in the region. Meanwhile, the Guinean military government has responded to the current mobile internet restrictions and interference with certain private radio frequencies. The government spokesperson contends that internet access is not an inherent right that individuals must necessarily assert. Concerning radio frequency interference, Ousmane Gao Diallo accuses the affected radios of failing to adhere to the ethical and professional standards governing their profession. Diallo further indicates a pending response to a letter received by the Ministry of Posts and Telecommunications along with the regulatory authority from the High Communications Authority on the matter. Tawfiq Abdel Nasser has won this report filed in by WADR's Conakry correspondent Cherno Alpha Ibrahim Abaldi.
In a media address, the government spokesperson Ousmane Gawal vehemently denies cutting off the country's internet, citing reasons preventing Guineans from accessing the connection.
Internet is not a right, and the internet is not cut off in the country. The internet works. If there are malfunctions, there are malfunctions. You have to stop. Where there are no malfunctions, our country is only connected by one submarine cable. We have to stop. We are not going to repeat it every time there is a problem.
Amidst this, critical radio stations facing opposition from the junta experienced 2 weeks of frequency jamming. The Minister of Posts and Telecommunications attempts to justify this action.
People often treat radio studios like courts of law. All day long, when a citizen is charged by the courts, most media outlets hold a trial in their studios. It's an outrage. You are on trial, you are judging justice. That's not the role of the press. It's not in every country that you see a radio station where someone takes the floor to say, this is a government of drug traffickers. The president is a narco. That's not journalism.
In response, press associations decide to confront the government, starting this Wednesday, seeking the removal of restrictions on radio frequencies and social networks. Ousmane Gawal Diallo directs criticism towards journalists. In solidarity, Wednesday is declared a press-free day in Guinea by press associations and the Professional Union of the Guinean Press.
Tawfiq Abdel Nasser reporting.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. NewsLink continues.
We're live on YouTube at WADR. Now, Ghana's Attorney General and Minister of Justice Godfred Yeboah-Dame is advocating for harsher penalties for the illegal mining kingpin Aisha Juan. He has announced his decision to appeal against the 4 to 6 year month sentence given to the Chinese national. The Attorney General argues that the convict should have been sentenced under the amended Minerals and Mining Act, which imposes a minimum of 15 years and a maximum of 25 years for such offences. From Accra, Nadiri Tete completes the story.
Anyone also known as Aisha 1, received a sentence on December 4, 2023 for illegally mining without a license, accompanied by a 48,000 Ghana cedis fine. The presiding judge, Justice Lady Alsei Mafo, expressed regret over the limited sentencing capacity under the outdated Minerals and Mining Act 2006, Act 703, allowing a maximum 5-year jail term for such offences. Deputy Attorney General Alfred Itiayebua voiced the government's satisfaction with the court's decision.
We think that 4 years, 6 months is reasonable in the circumstance. Article 19.6 is to the effect that the sentence then should be the sentence that you can use. You cannot use the new regime. And so far the sentence then was to the fact that the maximum of 5 years, we think that's the right position of the law. We can also not amend our constitution at this stage, but that's the law even worldwide.
However, within 24 hours, Attorney General Godfrey Wadr announced the state's decision to appeal. The appeal aims to have Aisha 1 sentenced under the Minerals and Mining Amendment Act 2019, Act 995, which mandates a minimum 15-year and maximum 25-year sentence for such offences. The AG finds it perplexing that Aisha 1 was sentenced under the old law, asserting that she was tried under the new law.
My deputy has not said anything different from what I'm saying today. My deputy actually stated the reasons why the judge sentenced in the manner in which she did. We think that a judge may have legitimate basis for sentencing based on the sentencing regime prevailing at that time. But another judge could also take a different view, which is that the sentencing regime applicable as the date of conviction is what ought to be applied. The accused person was actually tried under Act 995, and that is why I find it a little incongruous or inconsistent to hold that when it comes to sentencing, at that point, you are going to apply a different law. We exhaust the avenue possible to ensure that she is punished as severely as possible.
The Attorney General further asserted that if the appeal does not favour the state, he is prepared to escalate the matter to the Supreme Court. For WADR, Nadidi Teti, Accra.
The United Nations Women in Liberia is urging state security, particularly the National Police, to intensify their efforts in addressing, responding to, and leading initiatives to prevent sexual and gender-based violence in the country. Despite sustained support over the years, sexual and gender-based violence remains a significant obstacle to Liberia's recovery, mainly in the aftermath of the 14-year war that concluded in 2003. Danny Popper in Monrovia tells us more.
Currently, prevalent forms of sexual and gender-based violence (SGBV) in communities include early marriage, rape, sexual assault, forced prosecution, and more. To safeguard the lives of women and girls, UN Women Liberia Country Representative Comfort Lamte stresses the importance of continuous investment and urges the police to take a more proactive stance in addressing SGBV cases.
Police are normally the first line of response to these crimes, and the police also in taking gender-based violence crimes seriously and ensuring that these crimes go through the course of the law for prosecution.
The head of the National Police Women and Children Protection Division, Susan Teller, reassured the readiness to combat SGBV with the provision of necessary logistics.
The Liberian National Police, with that orange color or signal that we are ready and prepared to end violence against women and girls in Liberia. And let's all unite, stand up, prevent, invest in preventing violence against women in Liberia and the world at large.
These statements were made as part of the 16 days of activism in Monrovia. For NEWSLINK on West Africa Democracy Radio, I'm Darlington Popper in Monrovia.
Well, here in Senegal, I beg your pardon, here in Senegal, a workshop by the World Health Organization Africa Region and the Pasteur Institute in Dakar is underway to examine and implement measures to effectively transport sample test. Ogebirika was at the event and now reports.
Infectious diseases are a global threat, particularly in the West African sub-region. The crisis highlights the importance of detecting and responding to public health challenges. The World Health Organization suggests a high-performance laboratory network with an efficient biological sample transport system. Dr. Olivier Manigat, senior team leader for the GFA Consulting Group, speaks on the importance of this project.
Currently, in our countries, in West Africa, we have many vertical systems that are supported by different programs, and all are functioning separately. So we try to integrate all those systems together to build this integrated sample transport system for biological samples.
ECOWAS countries and Mauritania discussed various biotransformation initiatives, revealing concerns and challenges in implementing the biological transport system. Dr. Sheku Jiang, the director of the National Public Health Laboratories in the Gambia, shares plans to address limitations and ensure success during discussions on the integrated biological transport system.
If you look at the agenda, like countries will present, then after we'll go into groups, and that may take just 1 or 2 days, then we put all the systems that are existing in different countries, because the similarities are more than the differences. So it will be easier to harmonize the similarities, and then the differences we can just see how best we can adapt one country, what they are doing, and then the other countries will follow.
Public health experts stress the need for better equipped laboratories to combat epidemic diseases. The integrated transport system aims to enhance disease surveillance and strengthen epidemic response in ECOWAS countries.
Ogebirika with that report. You are listening to NewsLink on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM, Dakar, Senegal. Here's a reminder of our top stories. The Nigerian army renders an open apology to the government and people of Kaduna State over the drone strike that killed nearly 100 people. G5 Sahel faces dissolution as Chad and Mauritania consider implementing Article 20 establishing the joint platform. Guinean government defends mobile internet restrictions and accuses radios of ethical lapses. We also told you that UN Women in Liberia is calling for heightened police action against sexual and gender-based violence. Ahead in the news is our press review, guest interview, and sports update. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
As a reminder, we stream live on wadr.org. In Côte d'Ivoire, efforts are underway to clear the primary roads across the country with a particular focus on urban areas set to host the upcoming CAN 2024. The commencement of this operation took place in the Adjamé commune. This initiative is part of a comprehensive plan to ensure the smooth flow of traffic nationwide in anticipation of the African Cup of Nations scheduled to be hosted by Côte d'Ivoire from January 13 to February 11. The ongoing operation is set to continue leading up to the commencement of the tournament. David Vincent tells us more.
The objective of this initiative is to enhance the appearance of the country's primary thoroughfares, consequently improving the overall aesthetics of its towns and cities in preparation for the commencement of the CAN. Bulldozers are actively dismantling stalls, makeshift tables, and container-shaped stores that have haphazardly encroached upon public spaces. The impetus behind this operation stems from the initiative led by Gilda Simi, the Deputy Cabinet Director of the Minister of Sanitation. Transitioning to the subsequent phase, the state, as articulated by the Deputy Director of Cabinet, envisions fortifying these thoroughfares. Amid the eviction process, a prevailing sense of understanding permeates among those affected. Looking beyond the African Cup of Nations, authorities emphasize the sustainability of these actions to ensure cleanliness and enhance the overall livability of the communes. These measures are anticipated to endure well beyond the conclusion of the African Cup of Nations, scheduled to commence on January 13, 2024.
David Vincent reporting.
This is the newspaper review. Stay on top of the news. Get the most important stories with added insight and concise review.
This is the newspaper review.
Well, joining us from Banjul, the Gambian capital, is WADR's Sankule Janko with breeze of major and banner headlines of the national dailies.
Hello there and welcome to this edition of the newspaper review. Let's begin today's newspaper review with the Point newspaper, whose lead story reads, Presidential nomination fee to hit $1 million. Previously, it was $50,000, but according to this report, the fee will now hit $1 million for you to qualify to contest for presidency in the Gambia. Parliament adopts report on criminal offences bill. Seized 3-ton cocaine was for delivery in the Gambia. State says George R's in law in trial. Let's move on to the Fourier newspaper. The Fourier newspaper's lead story says National Assembly Joint Committee recommends $1 million as deposit for presidential candidates. Same lead story as that of the Point newspaper. President Barrow tours OIC Road project. This other one reads 200,000 Gambians directly depend on fisheries sector, according to Minister Jallo. Children occasionally share a bed at Canifing General Hospital, CEO states. This other one reads, man charged with grievously harming his wife with cutlass. Let's move on to the Voice newspaper. The Voice newspaper's lead story today reads, Barrow entreats Kumbangas to take ownership of sea. Well, let's take a look at this other story, and it reads, High Court dismisses Creed Energy's application to freeze over $300 million. And with regards to corruption trial involving government officials, witness tells court he knew 3 senior government officials via duplicated letter over $11,470 budget. IPPC list Gambia among 100 most climate vulnerable countries. Let's take a look at the final newspaper for today, and that is the Standard newspaper. And the lead story on the Standard newspaper reads, BAC, that is Brikama Area Council, at standstill. Barrow says Jammeh's burden could be easier if he accepted to be ex-president. Let's see if he will accept to become ex-president when his term ends as president of the Gambia. New election bill calls for fresh voter registration. Gambia to adopt digital ID implementation framework. Witness in suspected PRU killers trial fails to appear. And the final story for today reads, Tourism Minister announces task force to crack down on tax evaders. I'm afraid these are the major stories making headlines on Gambian dailies. And it's back to you in the studio.
Many thanks, Sankule Janko.
Politics,
Analysis on major news,
social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Our guest this afternoon is Morgan Asogba, a regional governance and security expert who speaks to the Nigerian government's cancellation of several agreements signed with institutions such as the European Union and other states. On Tuesday, Niamey and Bamako announced the withdrawal of 2 long-standing treaties with France that govern cooperation and administrative assistance in tax matters. Our guest shares his perspectives on the long-term effect of these decisions and Nigeria's quest to build economic resilience like those of the Sahel Alliance states, that is Mali and Burkina Faso.
Currently, it is going to be very difficult to see the materialization of any type of benefit. What is sure is that once the coup happened in Niger, most of the European countries, especially the European Union, decided to freeze their relationship in terms of cooperation, support, whatever type of financing they might be having with Niger. Most of them have been freezed. And this has definitely impacted the social life in Niger. And the ECOWAS did not help Niger as well because it all started with the sanction from the ECOWAS. So Niger has decided at that very moment to learn from the resilience of Mali and Burkina Faso.
So let me quickly ask you, I love that you said Niger is trying to build itself in terms of economic resilience, but turning to Mali and Burkina Faso, these countries in the Sahel themselves have been shut down or shut out of several financial institutions and benefits. So how will this work?
this is not going to work just because of Mali and Burkina. This is going to work because of the other partners that are working with Mali, Burkina, and also Niger. When you look at the moves of the United States of America, which has decided to send an ambassador to Niger recently, it shows that the United States of America, whether we like it or not, it has the firm intention to cooperate with Niger on many different levels, even though they have qualified Niger situation as a coup, freezing therefore some cooperation and financial assistance. But one thing is very sure is that some level of cooperation and support will be going on. When you look at the other side, what are the real needs of Niger currently? You have security and you have financial. When you look at the other side, Niger has been working with Mali and Burkina Faso, which have established officially their partnership with Russia.
Just this week, we saw the new Wagner boss arrive in Niamey for cooperation. So how do you have, technically speaking, two people on the extreme end of the aisle allow Niger to have a beneficial relationship with both parties, that is Russia and America?
The answer is just one word: interest. Interest. Russia has key interest in staying in the Sahel, and Niger is open to Russia. And the key interest is mostly security in terms of military assistance and equipment, and strategy to take back control of the Sahel landmass when it comes to dealing with terrorists. And you have economic opportunity. And this is not just from the side of Russia. When you look at the U.S., the interest of the U.S. is key in having some solid ground within the Sahel region. And key for what? We have the issue of, let's say, gas, the gas and the pipeline project, and many other projects that are key to the U.S. So when it comes to interest, when interests are at stake, these partners that looks very conflictual can find their way of defending their interests in a ground such as Niger. So Niger will be benefiting from Russia collaboration or cooperation. And the U.S. has interest in staying there, not just for his personal interest, but also in terms of watching over the various action of Russia within the Sahel region, because France is out and most of the European Union are out. So the only solid partner of those key players of the international scene that is remaining within the Sahel currently is the U.S.
That was our guest and a NEWSLINK contributor, Morgan Asogba. All right, in the world of sport, Ghana's Black Queens have secured qualification to 2024 Total Energies Women's Africa Cup of Nations despite losing 1-0 away to Namibia on Tuesday. Ghana won the tie 3-2 following their 3-1 home victory in the first leg last week. The West African country will return to the competition for the first time since hosting the tournament in 2018 after failing to secure qualification in the last edition in 2022. Elsewhere, Senegal also booked a ticket to Women's Africa Cup of Nations after a goalless draw with Egypt in Cairo on Tuesday. This followed a 4-0 win for the Teranga Lioness in the first leg last week. And with that, we round up sports update. That's a wrap of this edition of NEWSLINK here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Krista Mukidi for the technical support. Do interact with us via social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram at WADR News, and on Facebook, West Africa Democracy Radio English Service. I'm Abdullahi Hassan. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to NewsLink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0, and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio.